Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/teacherrecharge. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Go to www.audibletrial.com/teacherrecharge today. I'm Fred Kepp. I'm currently in one of the coolest Airbnbs on the planet, and you're listening to the Teacher Recharge. Let's get it going. Hello, all you beautiful, beautiful people out there. I hope your Monday is off to a fantastic start. If you're listening to this on a Tuesday, it's probably because you had Monday off for Labor Day. So I hope your Labor Day was fantastic and your Tuesday's off to a great start. Today we have a wonderful guest that was willing to come on the show with us. His name is John Williams. He is the creator and founder of LifeThatCounts.org. And that is an organization that is dedicated to helping students make better decisions for healthy outcomes. Now, how this started was John actually started as a volunteer, helping with peer-to-peer mentoring and having that positively affect a school. And he was able to get a grant, and he was able to have a pilot school. During the first 2 years, Life That Counts was able to help that pilot school experience unprecedented outcomes in the school's history. For the first time, using the curriculum that John was building as he went, the school experienced a decrease in discipline referrals by over 96%. That's from 49 per month to only 2 per month. I mean, that is crazy. He's here today to talk about how he did this. Now, this might be actually a 2-part interview. We got to talking and we talked for a while, but it's all good stuff. And I think it'll really pump you up for the week ahead. And then, if it is 2 parts, it'll pump you up for next week as well. Without further ado, enjoy this interview. I think you're going to love it, and I hope it makes your day. All right, everyone. Today, I'm here with John Williams, the founder and president of LifeThatCounts.org. How are you today, John?
I'm well, Fred. How are you, man? It's good to catch up with you.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Good to catch up with you, too. It's been a while, for sure. I want to just jump straight in and ask, what is all this that you're passionate about? Give us a little bit of a background to everything that you're doing right now.
Yeah, the short of it is, Fred, I grew up in sort of an inner city in Alabama. I never met my father. I lived in a very abusive, very dysfunctional home, a lot of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, physical abuse. There was other kinds of abuses as well in my home. My whole goal for my life was my wife is going to know her husband and my kids are going to know their dad. And I wanted my wife to be loved, affirmed, valued, supported, taken care of, bloomed, groomed, whatever, man, by her husband. And I wanted my kids to have the loving nurture of their dad. So as I've got to grow up doing this walk called life, I've got to grow into that. So my wife and I will have been married for 17 years come January. Uh-huh. And we have 2 boys. We have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. So they're trying to eat us out of house and home.
So you said 17 years of marriage. You want to know how long I've been married? About a month and a half now. So what?
Congratulations, man! I didn't know you.
I think the last time we talked was before that. That's really cool. For everybody out there, what is your number one advice for your biggest advice for being married, for married life?
Yeah, learn to say yes, ma'am, really quick.
I love it. LifeThatCounts.org. I just wanted to kind of get a background about that. So what are you doing with that particular thing? What are some statistics behind it?
Well, Fred, we exist to help students make better decisions for more healthy outcomes. So for the last 15 years or so, I've Google searched almost weekly 2 words, hot and school. And then I'll click the little news icon in Google, and it never fails that the top results every time I do it, it's always something negative. It's always something that brings a black eye on education, that brings a black eye on schools in America. So you don't have to be a rock scientist to know that as far as youth culture in America goes, we're not in a very good place. So what our organization has chosen to do and focus on at Life That Counts is we solve some of those issues facing youth culture around our country. So we provide trial tested, rigorously evaluated solutions that any school in any community around the U.S. can adopt and implement to transform culture. It's almost like this, if you will. We have classes on biology. We have classes on geometry, on English. We have those types of classes, but where's the class on life? So that class almost doesn't exist anymore. In working with the Center for Disease Control and the U.S. Census Bureau, our best guess right now in America is that roughly 3 out of 10 kids coming into our schools daily are coming from homes where they have one or more biological parent at home. That leaves 7 out of 10 kids coming into our schools around the U.S. who have one or none biological parent in their home. So it's kind of like this, Fred. Quick question. Did you have brothers or sisters growing up?
Yes, I did. I have one sister. I have one sister. Yeah.
Yeah. Is she older or younger?
Older.
Older. All right. So how much older?
Oh my gosh. Put me on the spot. I think she's 3 years older.
Okay. So you guys grew up relatively close together in age.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Did you and your sister ever fight in the backseat of the car?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let me ask you this, Fred, because I don't know about you. I don't know this about you. Did you have both your mom and dad at home growing up?
Yes, I did.
Okay, you're the anomaly. So how old are you, Fred?
I'm 24.
All right, 20. Yeah, you're that 3 out of 10 coming in. Maybe that 3 out of 10, right? Because it's one or more. So you guys definitely fought in the back seat growing up. Yeah. So I'm just curious, did your dad ever threaten to pull over the car or turn around while you're driving and tell you guys to knock it out? Was there ever that component that happened with you guys?
He'd usually turn around and tell me to knock it off, but yeah.
Now let me ask you this. Were there ever times in your life where your father affirmed you, where he gave you a hug and where he said, Fred, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the man that you're becoming, right? How about even at your wedding? Was he there at your wedding?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Was he there by your side, supporting you, walking you through it?
Definitely.
All right. Now, what if you're that kid who doesn't have that?
That's just, I couldn't even imagine.
So carry it out to another degree. What if your kid that not only has the emotional validation by his parents, her parents, they don't already have the healthy, disciplined, relational piece through their parents. But you're that kid, and what you do have is you do have a smartphone with Instagram and snaps to twits to tube, right?
Yeah.
And what if you're always looking at how cool everyone else's life is except your own?
Man, I don't know. That would be rough. What does that do
for you? That would be rough.
Yeah, that would be very rough. Because then you start to think of what life should be, even though there's really not a set thing of what life really actually should be. But you start to get an idea, kind of pushes you toward one way.
Well, and here's what's crazy about that. Do any of us actually show our real lives on Instagram? Or
no
on
way. Not at all.
We curate it, right? We do a highlight reel of our best plays of the day. I mean, it's our weekly top 10 on ESPN is what we post on our social. So if that's all we're seeing and we don't have anything, quote unquote, social worthy to post about our life, and then if we're just seeing that top 10 and that top 10 is maybe we're following someone like Drake or someone like, Lil Pump or something like that, and it's their social feed is full of what their social feed is. But wait, I'm an 11-year-old young man. I'm living in the inner city. Doesn't matter if I'm white, black, Hispanic, whatever. Doesn't matter if I'm in the north, south, east, or west. It doesn't matter. That's the person that I'm looking to pattern my life after. Their lyrics are becoming the philosophies that I want to live by.
Right.
Do you see how this perpetuates?
Definitely. Yeah. And I've seen this.
MTV did a thing back it was either the late 90s or the early 2000s. And the documentary was asked the question, is it culture that drives social, or is it culture that drives media? Because that was back before social media. Does culture drive media, or does media drive culture? So I was talking with Lita Blank, who's an executive producer. She produces movies a few days ago. And Lita works with people like Maggie Q and Dylan McDermott, and she worked with Whoopi Goldberg and just different folks like that. But I'm having this conversation with Lita, and I'm bringing this up, which one drives which. And she believes that it's media and it's social that drives culture, because when we flash these things on the big screen, and when we flash these things across your electronic devices, then that's what you're trying to live up to, right? That's who you're trying to be. So I want to push it back a second, and I want to go even into something that I observed this summer with my own kids. So I had a pretty rigorous travel and speaking schedule this summer, and I just come off of speaking at the State Department of Education's annual conference in Mobile, Alabama, and this was for the State Department of Alabama, and I gave talks there on how to stop a school shooter, and we can come back to that if you want. But while over the course of like 10 days, my 15-year-old son, who was traveling with me, had spent something like 93 hours on his phone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So you know how we calculate this, right? We go under your settings, we look at your battery usage, we count it all up, we see what you're doing, right?
Right.
Get this. My wife was with me. My kids were we're all together, but I'm just totally like, it's work zone. My family gets that I'm in kind of work mode, and they're along for the ride and all that kind of thing. It was a rigorous schedule. At any rate, even me as the dad of the 30% kid, even I let that go under my radar. Freddie spent a full 24 hours and 10 days on Snapchat.
Yeah.
He spent one whole day of his life in 10 days. So he spent 10% of his life on Snapchat.
Oh my gosh.
He spent more than 2 full-time jobs in 10 days on his phone.
Dang.
Yeah. So let's just drive back to that social, relational, emotional piece and see what's going on with our kids. So if the emotional validation is not there, and if we're not raising kids who are healthy, if we're not raising kids who are, and it's not really a question of right or wrong anymore. We've actually learned to phrase it better. The better way to phrase this is what is healthy for you, what is unhealthy for you. And we all agree that 93 hours on your phone in 10 days is unhealthy.
Right.
Even my 15-year-old agreed with that. Now, here's what's curious about that. I want to fast forward 3 weeks from that day. Okay. My son was with me. I was working a youth camp. My 15-year-old was with me. I was working a youth camp up in northern Vermont. And while I was working that camp, my son had absolutely no cell service whatsoever on his phone. It was a brick, right?
No.
I know. You know what's crazy? I'm not going to say too much here, just because I know that he wouldn't want me to on an interview like this.
Fair enough.
But the emotional heartstrings that were pulled when I took him to the airport with his mom to head back early. My wife's a teacher, so she had to come and get her classroom ready and stuff. The emotional heartstrings that were pulled over that 5 or 6 days of them being with me at camp, when he got to make real, authentic, raw connections with people. He asked me in the car, Fred, Dad, how do I know which ones to choose as my good friends? And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Whoa.
And he was like, Dad, they're all great people. I don't know which one. They're all different, but they're all great people, and I don't know which ones to choose. And I thought, wow.
Yeah.
I thought that's youth culture done well.
Right.
And, we had a great team there. We had a great staff there. The students were, they had slam pack schedules with games and activities and small group time and big group time. And there was, song and dance and just goofy things like that. Right. We're crazy games and of course food, all of the usual suspects. He got to completely unplug. He went through a season where he was completely plugged in into a season where he was completely unplugged.
Right.
And the juxtaposition between the outcomes and the effect that had on my son, it was almost like an unexpected controlled experiment.
Right.
It was crazy. What we do, and this is where we help schools turn the corner, and this is where we come in and we work to serve, because we're all in this for the betterment of tomorrow. What we do is we help come in and we help fix that culture piece, and we help identify not negative behaviors that are happening, but what we do is we say, okay, what do we want the culture of this campus to look like? And then how do we become intentional about it? And we use a multidiscipline method that is cross-age, collaborative, peer-to-peer. Cross-age is younger students working with older students. Collaborative is they meet together in regular weekly, bi-weekly groups, and then peer-to-peer. So it's student on student. You and I are both youth speakers, so we know what it's like to go into a school and speak on a platform and that kind of thing. But that may be 1% of the solution. Like topyouthspeaker.com, like, you know, all of the guys out there just really hustling to both serve the community and provide for their families and all of that thing. Like that may be it may be 1%. I'm not even sure it's 100% of the solution, because you think about just the time on it. It's a 45-minute window where someone comes into your school once. And then here's what I'm curious of. 11 days later, odd number. Do they even remember? So what we want to do is, so not only do we provide those solutions as well with experienced guys who come in like Laura King and Jamel Feldner and others, and myself included. In addition to that, what we do is we provide year-long solutions and strategies and proven methods that have been rigorously evaluated, actually evidence-based now through the U.S. Department of Education. Teen Pregnancy Prevention helped with a grant to get some of that stuff in our curriculum, evidence-based. I'm excited about that. Evidence-based to come in and serve students, meet them where they are, to move the needle in youth culture even that farther along, to help students experience what health looks like and help them truly make better decisions for more healthy outcomes.
And I love it. Well, hey, we are going to take a real quick break to thank a sponsor, and we will be right back. We got John Williams on the mic today. Ouch. Gosh. Hit in the head with that. That was funny. All right.
You know we're recording video too, right?
Yeah, this is great, man.
We can make a blooper. You can make a blooper reel.
Instagram. All right.
Right.
Okay, here we go. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audible.com/Teacher Recharge. Now, for you, the listeners of the Teacher Recharge podcast, Audible is offering that free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. When I have a guest on the show, I always ask for a book recommendation. John, what is a book that you would recommend to all of our listeners out there?
The Memoirs of Phil Knight. It's the name of the book is Shoe Dog. Phil Knight it's his memoirs. I'll tell you, man, hands down, probably the best book I've ever read in my life, period.
Oh my goodness. That is a huge endorsement there. All right. To download that book for free or any of their over 180,000 other titles that you can choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player, go to audibletrial.com/Teacher Recharge. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Teacher Recharge for your free audiobook and free 30-day trial. And we are back in the studio kind of in the studio. Man, it's kind of weird. I like to say in the studio, but once again, across the nation from each other, but still in the studio in our hearts with John Williams, the founder and president of LifeThatCounts.org.
Let's go back to the tragedy that happened in Parkland, Florida this year. Now, I'll save this story for later of what happened a week later in northern Idaho. Mm-hmm. But let's consider Parkland. Now, I need to preface this by saying that in no way am I advocating blaming the victims. Mm-hmm. In no way is this intended to advocate that I'm blaming the victims. Remember how I grew up. I grew up in a very abusive, very alcoholic situation. Mm-hmm. My family members, brothers, cousins, myself, we were knocked around, beaten, cussed out. Just made to feel completely worthless on a weekly, almost daily occurrence. Okay. That was never my fault. That was never my brother's fault, my cousin's fault for getting beat the way that we were and all that kind of thing. It was never my aunt's fault when my uncle would go on a drunken binge and grab her by her throat and then closed fist hit her in the face repeatedly until she was passed out, until he knocked her out. It was never so in no way, please hear my heart here in saying in no way am I advocating blame shifting to the victims. But I do want to ask this question. And I think that this is a question that can get lost if we get too caught up in taking one side or the other. And the question that I think can get lost is this. Think about the young man who pulled the trigger. His adopted dad dies when he's 6. His adopted mom dies last Thanksgiving. His girlfriend breaks up with him in December, right before school lets out. Okay. All the while, this guy is, 19 years old? 18 years old at the time.
Right out of high school, yeah.
He has high functioning spectrum autism disorder. So he's high functioning autistic. So there's already something going on there. Here's what I'm curious of. Where were the people on the news who said, when this guy's adopted mom passed away, I came beside him and I put my arm around him and I said, hey man, I just want you to know I'm here for you. Hey man, come over to dinner with me tonight. Definitely. Hey man, hang out with us. Hey man, let's play. Not that I'm advocating for this, but hey man, let's go play Halo.
Yeah.
Hey man, let's hang out. And then when his girlfriend breaks up with him, again, was this guy ridiculed? Was he mocked? Was he? And his principal spoke out on a little bit of this, so we know that he was. Yeah. So was he mocked? Where was his support system? Right. Exactly. Again, here's what I want here. I think what I'm advocating for is, man, there's 17 people who didn't get to go home that night. The students at the school, man, they'll never know what it's like to give Christmas presents to their own kids, and they'll never get to experience the birth of their own kids. And just like you got to get married, Fred, they'll never get to get married, and they'll never get to experience that life. And they're no longer here just because some kid along the way made the most foolish decision you could possibly make. Yeah. So it's kind of like, let's do something about that. So here's what we know. Aside from some kind of miracle, I don't know that we're going to be able to turn the clock back on parents not being able to work things out and stay together in their homes for their kids. So that emotional validation, that social validation, that relational, that what we used to call it home training, right? As older folks, we call it home training because you learn how to treat each other at home and then carry that into your school. So what we've got to do is we've got to find a solution that works. We've got to find something that can plug into our schools, that we can actually invest the time. Biology doesn't matter if you have bullets flying in your classroom. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Simple as it absolutely doesn't matter. Yeah. So is there a solution out there where we can have that life class where we can create some real accountability, where we can harness and leverage? Here's what we know about students. Every student in every classroom around the world, especially in the U.S., has influence. Every person has influence. The question is whether or not they're using that influence. So how can we positively harness that influence to be intentional to help students make better decisions for more healthy outcomes? Yeah. So we do that. And that's what we bring to the table when we come in to serve schools. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Teacher Recharge podcast. Come back next week for part 2 of this interview with John Williams. Obviously, he's not afraid to tackle some tough subjects. It was a wonderful interview, and next week we'll have some story time, which is always a wonderful time. So if you know anybody that would be perfect for this podcast, or if you have any suggestions, questions, or topics you want covered,
please go ahead, email me at teacherrechargepodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is teacherrechargepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to check out my own speaking business and my own speaking website, go to fredmotivates.com and learn about the love and success approach to leadership. I would love to serve your school and talk with your students. Thank you so much once again. We will see you next week. And until then, peace.